The cottage cheese sitting in your refrigerator right now is probably not what you think it is. Go grab it, flip the tub over and look at the back. If you see guar gum, carrageenan, modified food starch, or whey protein concentrate anywhere on that ingredient list, then that product has been industrially rebuilt in a factory to look like something it fundamentally is not. And the brands doing this are some of the most familiar, most trusted names sitting in the dairy aisle right now. I spent 2 full weeks pulling ingredient lists and combing through recall records on every major cottage cheese brand I could get my hands on. 6 of these brands are cutting serious corners. 3 of them are still doing it clean, the honest way. And the single best one on this entire list costs under $4. I am starting with the worst offender and ending with the one that is genuinely worth buying every single week. Stay with me all the way to the end, because the final 3 change everything. Number 6. Breakstones. This is the one with the deep history. Founded back in 1882, the logo, the classic fonts, the entire visual identity was carefully designed to feel like something your grandmother trusted because she probably actually did. But here is something worth knowing before we even get to the ingredients on the back. In 2020, Kraft Heinz sold Breakstones to Lactalis, a massive French dairy conglomerate, as part of a deal valued at $3.2 billion. The heritage branding stayed exactly the same on the front. The ownership changed completely behind the scenes, and when ownership changes hands at that kind of scale, the pressure on margins tends to follow right behind it. So flip the tub over. Right there, early in the ingredient list, tapioca starch, not cream, not salt. Tapioca starch, a thickener doing the structural job that real cream is supposed to be doing entirely on its own. Now the 2% low-fat version is relatively tame. Cultured pasteurized skim milk, cream, tapioca starch, salt, vitamin A. Not perfect, but honestly passable. Grab the 4% small curd though, and the list gets noticeably longer. Modified food starch, xanthan gum, guar gum, and calcium phosphate, all added into the dressing. Modified food starch is one of the most common fillers in all of processed food. It adds bulk and texture without adding any real nutritional value at all. It is there to stretch the product further and to keep the production costs down. Then there are the flavored cups. The single-serve cottage doubles marketed as convenient, high-protein snacks. Modified cornstarch, added sugar, potassium sorbate as a preservative, natural flavor, a vague term that tells you almost nothing about what is actually in there. And the protein is often under 12 grams per serving, under 12 grams in something being sold to you as a high-protein snack. That is a lightly sweetened processed dessert wearing athletic clothing, and there is a recall history here worth knowing about. In 2014, roughly 1.2 million cases of Breakstones cottage cheese were pulled from shelves after ingredients were stored at improper temperatures at a California facility. Then in 2019, another recall pulled roughly 9,500 cases after consumers actually found red plastic and metal fragments in the product. 6 complaints were filed before that recall was even issued. A brand founded in 1882 does not automatically mean the 1882 recipe is what is inside that tub today. The new ownership, the growing ingredient list, and the recall record all tell a far more complicated story than the comforting heritage logo on the front ever will. Number 5. Knudsen. If Breakstones is the East Coast institution, Knudsen is its West Coast mirror image. It has been leaning on its California dairy story since 1919. Regional identity, warm inviting branding, the kind of label that reads as local and instantly trustworthy. But here is what the front of that tub will not tell you. Knudsen is also owned by Lactalis, the exact same French conglomerate that now owns Breakstones. 2 separate regional identities, 2 completely different heritage stories, 1 single parent company running the same playbook behind both of them. Most shoppers have absolutely no idea they are reaching for the identical ownership structure on 2 different coasts. Flip the low-fat tub and the ingredient list gets long fast. Modified food starch, calcium phosphate, xanthan gum, guar gum, added whey protein to push the protein count up into territory that looks impressive on the front panel, and sodium that can reach around 400 milligrams per serving for just a half cup of cottage cheese. General health guidance puts the recommended daily ceiling around 2,300 milligrams. 1 small serving is consuming nearly 1/5 of that before you have eaten anything else all day. But the fat-free version is really where things fall apart completely. It adds artificial color, mono and diglycerides, sodium phosphate, potassium sorbate, and acetic acid onto that already long list. Artificial color in cottage cheese. Think about that. Cottage cheese is naturally white. The only reason on earth to add coloring is to mask the appearance of a product that no longer looks like the real thing on its own anymore. When the manufacturing process strips so much out of the dairy that you actually need dye to make it look normal again, that is not cheese production. That is food engineering. Open Food Facts, the independent global food database, classifies Knudsen cottage cheese as Nova Group 4. That is the highest classification of ultra-processing that exists. Nova Group 4 includes instant noodles, packaged snack cakes, and soft drinks. That is the processing tier your cottage cheese is sitting in. Not the same tier as a slightly processed dairy product. The exact same tier as a bag of chips, and Knudsen was part of that same 2014 recall. That 1.2 million cases pulled over improper temperature storage at the California facility. Same parent company, same facility, same problem. 2 brands, 1 owner. And of all the brands I investigated, Knudsen has strayed the furthest from what cottage cheese was ever actually supposed to be. Number 4. Great Value. The Walmart store brand. And to be precise here, the low price itself is not the problem. There is absolutely nothing wrong with affordable food. The real issue is what that low price actually represents, and whether the label on the front is being honest about it. Flip this tub over and run through the stabilizer section. Guar gum, carrageenan, mono and diglycerides, which are processed fats used as emulsifiers, xanthan gum, carob bean gum, and potassium sorbate to preserve the whole thing. Other varieties in the Great Value line add maltodextrin and locust bean gum right on top of all that. Count those stabilizers up. 5 separate additives thickening, emulsifying, and binding together a product that should be held together entirely by its own curds. Mono and diglycerides deserve a specific mention right here. The Environmental Working Group has flagged them for potentially contributing small amounts of artificial trans fats. The FDA banned artificial trans fats from the entire food supply back in 2018 because of their direct connection to heart disease. But mono and diglycerides remain in a regulatory gray area because they are technically classified as emulsifiers rather than as fats. For anyone monitoring their cholesterol and cardiovascular health, that is genuinely worth knowing. And Great Value makes no commitment whatsoever to avoiding RBST growth hormones in its milk supply. RBST is a synthetic hormone that boosts milk production and is banned in Canada, the European Union, Australia, and Japan, but it is still fully permitted here in the United States. Without a stated pledge, there is simply no way to confirm whether the milk in your tub came from cows treated with it or not. The American Cancer Society has noted that milk from RBST-treated cows contains higher levels of IGF-1, a growth factor that some studies have associated with an increased cancer risk. And while that research is still ongoing, it is also worth noting that RBST use increases the risk of udder infections in cows, which in turn raises the likelihood of antibiotic treatment across the entire herd. But the biggest concern with Great Value is not even the ingredient list. In 2026, Saputo, the Canadian dairy company that manufactures Great Value cottage cheese for Walmart, issued a recall after the California Department of Food and Agriculture discovered the dairy ingredients may not have been properly pasteurized. That means the product may have contained harmful bacteria that the heating process was specifically supposed to destroy. Pasteurization exists precisely to prevent foodborne illness. Getting it wrong puts the most vulnerable consumers at direct risk, particularly the elderly, pregnant women, and anyone with a compromised immune system. Walmart sells more groceries than any other retailer in all of America. Millions of families buy Great Value without ever once reading the back of the tub. When that level of trust meets a pasteurization failure, the stakes are not abstract at all. If you are finding this investigation useful so far, a quick like genuinely helps this kind of content reach more people. It really does make a difference here on Scam Uncovered. Number 3. Prairie Farms. This one is particularly hard to look past, because the marketing here does not just quietly hint at quality, it actively campaigns for it. Blue ribbon imagery, direct references to dairy competitions. The brand has cited recognition from events like the World Dairy Expo as a central part of its quality story. Then flip the tub over. The stabilizer section contains 5 separate thickening and emulsifying agents. Got gum, mono and diglycerides, xanthan gum, carrageenan, carob bean gum, plus maltodextrin as a filler, and potassium sorbate as a preservative. 5 gums and emulsifiers in a single product that should need exactly 0 of them. And maltodextrin is really worth pausing on here specifically. It is a highly processed carbohydrate derived from corn, and it carries a glycemic index somewhere between 85 and 105, which is actually higher than plain table sugar. For anyone managing their blood sugar, pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, maltodextrin quietly sitting in your cottage cheese is the complete opposite of helpful. It is there purely as a filler, nothing more. It adds no protein, it adds no nutritional value whatsoever. It adds bulk and it keeps the cost down. An award for dairy quality is a real and legitimate thing, but recognition for the milk itself does not certify a finished product that leans on 5 industrial stabilizers to build the texture that genuine quality dairy would have created all on its own. The blue ribbon on the front is not an audit of the ingredient list on the back, it is decoration. And right now it is doing an awful lot of heavy lifting to keep your attention pulled away from that stabilizer blend. Number 2. Hood. If you grew up anywhere in New England, Hood has been a fixture your entire life. Not just a brand but genuinely part of the regional landscape, the kind of label you reach for without even reading it because you have been seeing it since you were a little kid. That deep familiarity is exactly why this one deserves the very closest look. A single Hood low-fat container carries whey protein concentrate, modified food starch, and 3 separate gums, guar gum, locust bean gum, and carrageenan, all of them working together to construct a texture that the base milk simply cannot produce on its own. Add sorbic acid as a chemical preservative to inhibit mold and yeast growth, and phosphoric acid to manage the acidity. The whipped and flavored varieties load even more on top of all that. Think about what 3 separate gums working in combination actually means here. It means the milk sitting underneath was never rich enough to hold the structure alone. The gums are not some minor supporting addition. They are the entire reason the product holds together at all. And if your cottage cheese needs a chemical mold inhibitor just to survive on the shelf, then a very fair question is how fresh it actually was when it first went into that tub in the first place. Truly fresh cottage cheese does not need mold inhibitors. It just needs to be eaten while it is still fresh. Consumer complaints about Hood cottage cheese frequently describe inconsistent texture between batches of the exact same product, which points directly to variation between production facilities rather than one isolated bad batch. When 3 gums are already working overtime to hold the structure together, and the result still varies run to run, that tells you something meaningful about the consistency of the underlying dairy going into it. But the more serious issue with Hood is the recall record. In 2022, HP Hood recalled nearly 392,000 cases of cottage cheese over a risk of plastic contamination. Then in 2024, another recall was issued after cottage cheese containers were found to contain completely undeclared ingredients, including pineapple, sugar, modified cornstarch, natural flavors, and phosphoric acid, none of which appeared anywhere on the label. For anyone with food allergies or dietary restrictions, undeclared ingredients are not a minor labeling inconvenience. They are a genuine safety hazard. 2 major recalls in 2 years. That is not an isolated incident. That is a clear pattern at the facility level. The front of the tub promises premium milk. The back is delivering premium thickeners and a quality control record that does not match the branding at all. Those are simply not the same product. Before we get to number 1, you need to understand the mechanism behind all of this, because the exact same system is operating behind every single brand on this list, and one ingredient in particular keeps showing up that deserves a plain English explanation. Real cottage cheese needs almost nothing: cultured milk, a little cream and salt. The milk ferments, the curd forms naturally, and the cream creates that rich dressing. 3 or 4 ingredients that has been the entire recipe for centuries. So why do so many tubs carry 10, 12, even 14 lines in the ingredients section? The answer is margin. Cream is expensive, real curd formation takes time, and it takes quality milk. So instead of paying for that, many manufacturers start with cheap thin milk, low fat or fat-free, and then rebuild absolutely everything in a factory after the fact. Starch goes in to firm up the curd. Industrial gums go into the dressing to make watery liquid behave like something rich and thick. And some brands add whey protein concentrate, a dried protein powder, to hit that headline number on the front without ever using enough quality milk to reach it through dairy alone. One ingredient worth understanding specifically is carrageenan. It shows up across several brands on this list, and it is worth knowing what it actually is. Carrageenan is a thickening agent extracted from red seaweed. The FDA considers food-grade carrageenan safe at current exposure levels, and that is the official position, but it has become one of the most debated additives in the entire dairy industry. Multiple peer-reviewed studies have raised concerns about its potential to trigger intestinal inflammation. Critics also point out that food-grade carrageenan may partially degrade during digestion, meaning what ends up in your gut may not be the exact same form that regulators originally tested. The degraded form, called carrageenan, is classified as a possible carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. In 2025, carrageenan sparked a whole wave of social media attention when consumers began sharing label photos and raising concerns online. Fact-checkers stepped in to confirm the FDA's current safety position, but the peer-reviewed research on gut inflammation exists regardless, and the ingredient is sitting on those labels either way. Here is what keeps all of it legal. The federal standard of identity for cottage cheese, the actual regulatory definition, permits a long list of optional stabilizers. A tub can legally contain guar gum, carrageenan, locust bean gum, xanthan gum, and modified food starch, and still carry the name cottage cheese with no qualifications required at all. The regulations allow it, the marketing does not have to mention it. That is the system. And number one is where it is being used the most aggressively and the most invisibly of all. Number 1, Country Fresh. And the entire category of rotating regional value tubs built on that same identical formula. Country Fresh is not just one single brand. It is a template, a manufacturing approach that moves through regional grocery chains under different names depending on exactly where you happen to be shopping. The logo changes, the regional identity changes, the product does not. The formula is completely consistent wherever it appears. Cultured non-fat milk as the base, stripped of its fat, thin and watery on its own. Then completely rebuilt using maltodextrin, guar gum, carrageenan, mono and diglycerides and locust bean gum. Natural and artificial flavoring layered right on top, a preservative to close it all out, and a wholesome dairy-looking logo on the front that reads as local and trustworthy. When the first ingredient in a cottage cheese product is fat-free milk, and the next 6 lines are thickeners, stabilizers and emulsifiers, you are not buying a dairy food with a few additives. You are buying an industrial product formatted specifically to look like a dairy food. That is a genuinely meaningful difference, and the reason this lands at number 1 is the pure invisibility of it. Breakstones has a name you can actually research. Hood has a regional identity you can trace back. Country Fresh and its equivalents rotate names by store and by chain, which means the brand familiarity that normally gives shoppers a reliable shortcut is completely disabled here. You cannot learn one name and apply it everywhere. The only thing that does not rotate along with the label, the only consistent fact across every single version of this product in every store, is the ingredient list on the back. When the brand can be anything under any name, the label is the only truth you actually have access to. That is the entire point. Now that you know exactly what to avoid and precisely why, here are 3 quick checks you can do in about 10 seconds the next time you are standing in that dairy aisle. No chemistry background needed at all. First, the tilt test. Tip the tub over onto its side and watch carefully what the liquid does. Real cottage cheese releases thin, clear, watery whey that separates quickly and cleanly, because absolutely nothing is holding it back. A gum-heavy product releases something thick, slow, and gel-like, because the gums were specifically engineered to bind that water and prevent it from draining freely. If the liquid inside your tub clings and pulls, the manufacturer puts something in there to make it behave exactly that way. Second, the first 3 ingredients. Flip the tub and read only those first 3. You are looking for cultured milk, cream and salt in any order. The moment starch, maltodextrin, a gum or whey protein concentrate appears inside those first 3 lines, you already have your answer right there. Third, the protein source check. If the front panel advertises a very high protein number, and whey protein concentrate is sitting right near the top of the ingredient list, then that figure is being partially inflated by processed powder, not by real dairy curd. Genuine cottage cheese made from quality milk reaches a solid protein count without ever needing a supplement. When that powder is there, it is quietly telling you something about the milk that the front of the tub deliberately chose not to say. 3 checks, 10 seconds. Now, here are the 3 brands that actually pass every single one of them. Best option number 3. Friendship Dairies. No blue ribbons, no farm campaign, no heritage story being pushed at you from the shelf. Friendship Dairies has been making cottage cheese for over 100 years now. And somehow, through every single wave of food industry consolidation, every pressure to reformulate, every industry shift toward cheaper inputs, they just never got around to changing what already works. Flip the tub over. Cultured non-fat milk, milk, salt, and enzymes. No gums, no starch, no protein powder padding the numbers, no carrageenan, no preservatives. Some Friendship Dairies tubs reach 16 grams of protein per serving, and every single gram of that comes from real dairy alone, not from a powder added in to inflate a front panel claim. It is widely available, priced competitively with the mid-range brands on the avoid list, and completely consistent in what it delivers every time. There is no complicated founder story here, no boutique positioning, no premium marketing budget. It is just cottage cheese made the way cottage cheese is supposed to be made, at a price that does not ask you to pay extra for the honesty. The fact that Friendship Dairies even exists, clean, affordable, and broadly stocked, is itself the evidence that the additives filling all those other tubs were never actually there for your benefit. They were there for the margin. Friendship Dairies simply never made that trade, and the ingredient list proves it every single time. If your store carries it, there is genuinely no reason at all to reach past it for something with a bigger marketing budget and a much longer ingredient list. Best option number 2. Good Culture. This brand makes a direct, bold promise right on the label. No gums, no carrageenan, no preservatives. And the ingredient list keeps every single word of it. Organic skim milk, organic whole milk, organic cream, sea salt, live and active cultures. That is the complete formulation, nothing else added. Good Culture was founded in 2015 by someone who had cleaned up his own diet and simply could not find a cottage cheese that matched what he was actually trying to eat. Real, unprocessed dairy, nothing reconstructed. He could not find one that met that standard, so he went and built one from scratch himself. The brand uses a cold fermentation process specifically designed to keep the live probiotics viable through the entire production chain and into the finished product on the shelf. And here is exactly what that decision produced in the market. Good Culture ended 2023 with 80% revenue growth. By 2024, it had overtaken Breakstones to become the second best-selling branded cottage cheese in the entire country, behind only Daisy. Fast Company reported the brand crossed $100 million in annual revenue and was on pace to double that figure. That growth did not come from some clever marketing campaign. It came from shoppers finally starting to flip tubs over, read the ingredient lists, and reject the gum and starch products that had dominated the dairy aisles for years. The market responded directly to a cleaner product. Multiple major nutritional publications tested cottage cheese brands throughout 2025 and 2026, and Good Culture ranked at or near the very top consistently across those tests. You will pay around $5 to $6 for Good Culture, more than most options on the shelf. But this premium is traceable. It is paying for a higher quality dairy base, for live cultures that remain active in the finished product, and for the genuine absence of everything the avoid list brands are using to simulate quality. Depending on the variety, it delivers up to 19 grams of protein per serving, with the classic low-fat version coming in at 14 grams at just 80 calories per half cup. When the price is higher and the reason behind it is real, that is genuinely worth knowing. You are paying for actual food, not for a better marketed version of starch and gum. Best option number 1. And this is the brand I really want you to actually remember when you are standing in that aisle. Daisy. Flip the tub over. The complete ingredient list. Cultured skim milk, cream, salt. That is it. That is everything. No starch, no gums, no preservatives, no protein powder, no modified anything, no natural flavor standing in for something else. Cultured skim milk, cream, salt, and straight into the tub it goes. Daisy delivers around 13 grams of protein per serving from nothing but that simple process. No powder, no concentrate, just real dairy doing exactly what real dairy does when you do not strip it all down and rebuild it with cheaper inputs. And here is the detail that should genuinely change how you look at the entire cottage cheese shelf from now on. Daisy is routinely one of the cheapest tubs in the whole dairy case, around $3.50 in most stores, often the lowest price per unit on the shelf. Just sit with that for a second. The most honest cottage cheese available, the shortest ingredient list. No industrial thickeners, no protein powder, no preservatives, absolutely nothing to hide. And it is also one of the least expensive options you can possibly buy. Every single dollar you spent above Daisy's price on the brands in the first half of this video was not buying you a better product at all. It was buying you more ingredients, and every single one of those extra ingredients existed purely to compensate for worse milk. You were paying a manufacturing premium for the cost of disguising a lower quality base as something it simply is not. The brands spending the most on stabilizers, gums, and powders are the exact ones with the most to hide, and they are charging you directly for the cost of hiding it. That is the most honest summary of the entire cottage cheese market right now. The product built on the fewest ingredients costs the least. The products built on the most ingredients charge the most. Because producing the illusion of quality actually costs more than producing the real thing. Here is where all of this finally lands. 6 brands, Breakstones, Knudsen, Great Value, Prairie Farms, Hood, and the entire Country Fresh category, are selling reconstructed approximations of cottage cheese using ingredients that have no place in a product this genuinely simple. The heritage logos, the farm imagery, the blue ribbons, the word natural stamped on the front, the ownership structures most shoppers never think to question, none of it tells you what is actually in the tub. Recall records, artificial coloring, ultra-processing classifications, pasteurization failures, and 5-additive stabilizer blends tell you far, far more. The ingredient list is where the truth lives. The front of the label is marketing, the back is the actual product. 3 brands, Friendship Dairies, Good Culture, and Daisy, are making cottage cheese the way it has always been made when it is made correctly. Real milk, real cream, and nothing added in to fake what those things naturally produce all on their own. So tonight, go to your fridge, tip your cottage cheese over onto its side, and watch closely what the liquid does. Then flip it over and read the first 3 ingredients. You will know in 10 seconds flat whether what you are holding is real or reconstructed. And if you find guar gum, maltodextrin, and carrageenan in something that should honestly contain just 3 ingredients, now you know exactly why they are there, who they truly benefit, and precisely which 3 brands to reach for instead every single time. If this changed how you are going to shop next time, do me a favor and share it with someone who is still buying the tub without ever flipping it over. The label has always been there sitting in plain sight. Now you finally know exactly what you are looking at, and that changes everything from here on out.